Hi, everyone. This is Tom and Jesse Talk Movies. I'm Jesse.
And I'm Tom.
Today, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking about the films of Kathryn Bigelow. This was Kathryn Bigelow month. And kind of because of a little setback last week, we should have been dedicating an individual segment to Near Dark, but life happens. So today we're going to be reviewing Near Dark, which was 1987, and Point Break, the original Point Break.
Yes.
1991. 1991, the incomparable Keanu Reeves.
Oh, yeah.
Patrick Swayze. So let's just jump right into it. We have a lot to say. Do you want to give like a general overview of like Kathryn Bigelow?
Yeah, she was a director that, I never really heard of until The Hurt Locker came out in 2008. And she was nominated, for an Academy Award, Best Director. And she was once married to James Cameron. But beyond that, she has a pretty interesting style. She's known for doing a lot of like dark, grittier action movies. So I thought, I believe this was your idea, actually. And I was very excited because I'm like, she's a director I'm not too familiar with. Let's dive into some of her work.
Sure. Yes.
So we decided, Near Dark and then Point Break, which I had never seen Near Dark before.
I hadn't seen it.
Point Break, I believe I had seen once many years ago, but this was pretty much like a fresh watch.
Okay.
So
if you want to dive right into it, let's talk about Near Dark first.
Yes.
Should have been the first one that we were talking about.
Yep.
So Near Dark, very generally, would be about a guy who kind of goes out and has a night on the town, and he's bitten by what turns out to be a vampire. And he kind of has to navigate the fact that he will be transitioning into a vampire, which entails him having to kind of kill and suck blood on his own right.
Yeah, it's a vampire road movie, I guess you would say.
Like a vampire western. Is that how
that's how it was characterized. Yeah.
So
the film stars Bill Paxton, Lance Henriksen.
Who's the lead actor there? Someone that
I don't really know him.
I'm not too familiar with.
I've never seen him before. Adrian Pasdar.
Okay.
I don't know him, but he plays Caleb. He is the lead actor of the film.
Right. So in the meantime, he's kind of left for dead once he's bitten as a vampire, and then he's abducted by kind of a clan of other vampires who put him through a gamut of tests to see if he's worthy of joining their group, which would be headed by Lance Henriksen, who I will get into detail about him, but I actually thought he was great as the leader of the cult.
Yes.
And then you had Bill Paxton, who is his loony self.
Yes. Big fan of Bill Paxton, ever since Twister.
Love Bill Paxton. So do you want to jump into your thoughts, what you thought about the film?
Yeah, I actually was not crazy about it. I really did not care for this movie. This is definitely one of Bigelow's, earlier films. Not really being a giant fan of vampires in general. I've seen a lot. Haven't seen a lot of good vampire movies. This one has developed a cult following over the years. My problem with this movie was, I guess, just like who cares? There was really nothing here that, grabbed me and pulled me into this universe. Road movies for me and a road movie is essentially, it always takes place in the West or Arizona, New Mexico, Texas area. And it's pretty much they're in the desert on these roads and they're just navigating the land. And it's an interesting kind of setting, but not really exciting enough to pull me in. So the story wasn't really anything special. It's a guy who just runs into a vampire group and so forth. And I just didn't think it was anything special. There's really nothing that stuck out for me. The lead actor, is focusing around this character, regular guy who is bitten and has to deal with it. And also he becomes part of the group of vampires, and he's kind of, traveling with them, and he has to earn their trust. There was nothing special about him that really stuck out. I wouldn't really say it was a memorable movie to me. It's certainly a cult classic. I just don't really see it. Maybe it's more of a taste thing. I can't really describe it other than I'm not into football games. So it would be like watching a football. I'm like, I don't really care.
Right.
But I will say the best part of this movie was Lance Henriksen.
thought he was great.
Yeah, he's good in this. He's in a bunch of other stuff. He did a lot of James Cameron type of movies, and he's known for doing a lot of horror and sci-fi in the 80s as well. He was the most exciting. Him and his girlfriend were the most exciting thing about this movie, I thought. But otherwise, I mean, there's one scene that kind of sticks out when they are like at the bar and they're kind of terrorizing people at the bar. But the film just never takes off for me. I thought it was a very slow start. And the two lead characters, Caleb and the other girl, she's just bland. I don't like when characters in movies, they're just very soft-spoken and it feels like you have to it's like pulling teeth to get them to speak. So this was also a first watch for you. What did you think?
It was just, it was forgettable. I think you said it best. It was like one of these archetypal sort of 1980s film where everything is like from the looks to the music. I mean, it's like if you watch this for the first time not knowing what year it came out, you would say it's from 1980 something, which for better or for worse. But it was just, I think that there were elements that if this was kind of ingredients in a recipe that could have been really good that just never really came to fruition. First of all, you're kind of just led to believe with any sort of a backstory that vampires exist. Well, okay. I mean, so it's obviously a suspension of disbelief, but I would have liked for them to maybe have gotten into the lore a little bit more.
I completely agree. It's kind of, we're just thrown in there, vampires exist. And then even by the end of the movie, it's just like, okay, that happened. I'm not saying we need a deep backstory,
but give me something.
What is this world?
Obviously what's kind of alluded to is in this pack of vampires that we see led by Lance Henriksen, who I agree with you, he was my favorite part of the movie. You could tell he's been doing this for quite some time. And I think that he was one of the most fascinating elements of the movie because he was so thorough in the way that he would kind of lure people to make them his prey. I wish we would have gotten a little bit more about Lance Henriksen and his girlfriend because as they were the heads of this organization, they could have been really, really interesting.
Yes.
The part that we got with our protagonist, again, wasn't so interesting. I think inherently there was some bits that could have been interesting there. His transitionary period was kind of like, oh boy, he comes to the point where he realizes if I don't drink people's blood, I'm going to die.
Yes. That stuff was handled well where they tried to give a little bit more to the character. Right. I will say I also did like the fact that what's going on in the background is that Caleb's father and younger sister are trying to find him. And I thought that was cool because otherwise you're just following a bunch of characters like in this van that's all blacked out or whatever, this vehicle. And I was just like, okay, there's not really a lot going on here. And that's fine. You don't need like a heavy plot, but I think your characters have to be interesting. And I just was not on board for that.
And it's like they picked the wrong characters to focus on.
I mean, totally.
I'm a huge Bill Paxton fan. Tom is a big Bill Paxton fan. He kind of felt a little bit miscast. I mean, I'm going to quote what you had said the other day when we were discussing it. Like everything was an 11. There was no slight reserved acting. Everything was just over the top.
Exactly.
From the intonations to like everyone's yelling the whole time. The family aspect was kind of interesting too, knowing that the protagonist's family was like searching all over for him and he was getting pushed, his father was getting pushed back from the police. Well, we have to go through bureaucracy, blah, blah, blah. But then there's a point pretty later on in the movie where their paths just kind of cross, and it felt like it was just so contrived the way that they came across each other, and it felt like just one of those Deus Ex Machina moments, the God in the Machine, where everything like they didn't know what to do next, so they're like, okay, they're going to meet at a random hotel. It was. I get what she was trying to do with the grittiness to the way the film looked, but it was an ugly looking movie.
I didn't think it was a nice looking movie. I mean, to me, this just was not a great script.
Right.
So I know at the time it wasn't like a huge hit, but since it has developed a big cult following.
And also some of the dialogue was like really cheesy. When I was talking about the imprint of what like a 1980s movie is, there was, which we're going to get into with Point Break too. Yeah. It's like, you just know what era this movie came from. It's just like these antiquated phrases and like stuff that makes you cringe. It's a shame looking back on it because like I said, I think that there were parts that I would have liked if you had a separate entry focused on Lance Henriksen's character. where you're kind of even if it's him recruiting new members or going back, like how did he transition from a human to a vampire? How long has he been doing this thing? There were so many elements in this universe that I think could have worked. You just focused on the wrong guy.
I agree.
So,
yeah, absolutely. It's not really a nice looking movie, and it's very grainy looking. Yeah.
So,
completely forgettable for us.
For me. Unfortunately, I don't have much more to say on that one.
No, it's one of those movies you watch, and I just felt like I walked away, and it was just 5 minutes later, completely forgot about it.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be like, even if I caught it on TV in a few years, it'd be like,
no, I would
change the channel.
I would not rewatch it.
Wasn't worth it for me.
Not at all.
All right, so that is near dark.
And then next up, we go another Kathryn Bigelow film, which is Point Break, 1991. This one is a more familiar movie. I think a lot of people will know this one. Been itching to rewatch it for a while. I think this was the perfect opportunity. This is the movie with Keanu Reeves and Patrick Swayze, where it deals with bank robberies, and they're wearing ex-president masks and that stuff. I mean, I feel like everybody knows that movie. It's certainly iconic.
And you talk about like a 1980s plot. So Keanu Reeves is this new hotshot cop, and he just comes onto the California force, and he's like
25. He's an FBI agent.
And Gary Busey is his nutty sidekick, and he's like, you're gonna have to infiltrate a group of surfers, and you've never surfed a day in your life. Go.
Yeah. It's a very goofy, unrealistic movie, but I enjoyed it for what it was. It was certainly entertaining. To me, I think the film definitely takes itself a little too seriously. And I think that could have been fixed by altering a lot of the dialogue and recasting.
Hasn't aged well.
Right, and recasting Keanu Reeves and Gary Busey. They're fine in the movie, but like, if this movie, I mean, they did do a remake of this in 2015.
We're not going to discuss that.
Which apparently nobody liked.
Right.
But I think a lot of people like it because it is one of those movies where it's like, it's the definition of the early 90s action movie. Right. So it has a certain charm to it.
It does.
I think it was pretty entertaining. I mean, Keanu Reeves, I was never really a fan of. Of course, he's going to be in this type of movie, but
you know what it is for me with Keanu Reeves, and we've had this discussion before. It took a long time for him to find his niche, or to have other people.
And what is that? Because I don't know.
Just the guy that kicks butt and utters maybe like 15 lines of dialogue.
Because he can't act, so that's what it is.
His acting. I mean,
like he's good in John Wick, but that role doesn't call for a lot.
Absolutely. So it's kind of the constraints of what you're working with as an actor, and they kind of hit a home run with John Wick because they're just going to be like, you're going to stand here, look handsome, and kick butt. Yes. And he does that well. But here he's like, there's some scenes where he's getting upset and he's showing all this emotion, and everything really just feels so forced. Yeah. But despite that, and despite nutty Gary Busey, like there are a lot of elements that worked with this movie. This
was a fun movie, and I think because it was a pretty cool idea. It's a solid script, and I think it feels fresh for the time where it's like, okay, there's a group of bank robbers. They've hit 27 banks in like a month and 3 weeks or something crazy like that. And we have nothing. They're just really good. And I think it's cool giving them the ex-president mask. So
I thought that was
there's a bit of character there. And I thought that was cool. I mean, the stuff where it's like goofy is when, okay, Keanu Reeves is going to break this case. He's a nobody. And it's like, they couldn't get anyone better. So you have to suspend your belief and be like, okay, they only got Keanu Reeves, who speaks like a surfer dude and looks like one, but he's never surfed before. So, okay, obviously we know why he was cast in this film. But having him go after them, like you could tell Keanu's really into the movie.
He's trying hard.
He's trying. He's not
doing a good enough job.
But
love you, Keanu.
But like there were a lot of Patrick Swayze is hands down the best actor in the film. Absolutely. He's a very interesting character. We've seen so many villains over the years, but I liked Patrick in the film. I thought he was perfect for this role. You have the female lead is Lori Petty, who's just she's
did absolutely their
she's
relationship
nuts in the film.
Keanu Reeves' relationship with Lori Petty was just absolute, so incredible and unbelievable. I felt nothing for
she
her.
feels very out of place in this movie, because if you know that actress, who I like her, but she's very out there. Like, she's always like nervous and jittery. Like, she strikes me as like she's good at playing like a certain role, and this they could have cast like Winona Ryder could have been in this, or no, I think she was too young at that point. But somebody like that at the time, I think she's very out of place in the film. But whatever, okay, she was big in the 80s and 90s, fine. But the story itself is really where the film succeeds. I think when the film is serious, I like some of that detective work they have to do, but what's really cool is that they have Keanu go undercover, and like, you got to learn surfing, because we know that these robbers are surfers, so you're going to go undercover. And that was it was pretty easy. It was pretty simple for him to find out who was in on it, so there wasn't much time spent, because it's a 2-hour movie. But there's not a lot of time spent of like, okay, they're surfers, we found that out, go. And then he finds them pretty easily. Yeah. Okay, whatever. It's an action movie, I get it. But that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It's very entertaining. It's thrilling.
Non-stop action.
Yeah, it's non-stop.
I mean, from surfing big waves to jumping out of airplanes.
The heist stuff was done well. And, there's a whole sort of like subgenre of heist films, and it's not a favorite genre of mine, but I like this one. I thought it was interesting, and just watching them break into a bank, and they're kind of all speaking with each other, and they call each other Reagan, right. And
some
Carter
of them even do the
forth.
Presidential accents, like someone.
I thought that was cool.
I really like that. That was, again, this was refreshing, because I think that it was a movie that it was just meant to be this fun sort of summer blockbuster, which is everything that this movie was about. Yeah,
it's not meant to be like, this is, there are two types of movies out there. There's like the artistic Academy Award movies, and then there's popcorn flicks like Point Break. It reminds me very much of the first Fast and Furious, which came out in 2001, which was actually 20 years ago, which is pretty scary. I saw that in the theater. And there's a lot of parallels between the film. So watching this, I'm like, it's crazy. This is reminding me so much of Fast and the Furious. And I totally would compare. I like Fast a little bit better, but, it's kind of cool to see these. I like intense action movies with likable, distinct characters, because there's so many action movies where we're just focusing on the action. There's not much plot. So it was kind of refreshing to watch Point Break, be like, okay, there's a storyline here, and I'm on board. And there was almost, that's a great comparison too. And if you want to maybe make a comparison for something more or less in the same era, not quite the same way, but almost like a Lethal Weapon type, where you have Gary Busey, and you have, Gary Busey's kind of the nutty character, which is more or less the same as like Mel Gibson. Yeah. And then you have Danny Glover, and I guess that would be Keanu Reeves, who's more the staid sort of, so it was like there were elements of that sort of the dichotomy between the two characters of Gary Busey, who's just like he's like he's not on the edge, he's over the edge. Yeah, and you have Keanu Reeves, who's this young hotshot, and he's like, I'm ready to solve this case. Right. But it is just so quintessentially 1980s-ish, because it's like from the opening shot that we get of the exposition of Keanu Reeves in the pouring rain, slow motion at a firing range. It was like a GQ commercial. That was absolutely ridiculous. And it but I kind of smiled at that point, because I'm like, this is just going to be a ridiculous 2 hours, and I'm going to have nothing but fun. And it didn't disappoint me. You talk about some of the absurdities in this movie. Like, here's one that I'm thinking, right? So Lori Petty, who ends up becoming the female love interest for Keanu Reeves, she's Keanu's surfing instructor, and he tries very hard to convince her to teach him how to surf. You couldn't have gotten anyone in the agency to teach you how to surf. Yes. Like, you had to go out and get Lori Petty's character. There's a lot of action movie logic. You talk about really, really silly dialogue. John C. McGinley is the worn out, over the top police chief kind of role. And
I mean, I couldn't even repeat some of the phrases that he utters. I mean, there's just
some of the
real,
dialogue right in the beginning. I'm like, this is ridiculous.
and you're like, wow, this is
Like, wow, they said that.
they said that. So it's something that definitely in today's sort of cinema, and I don't like to use that word, but it's like maybe some of that dialogue wouldn't have flown. So
Right.
everything about this is over the top. Explosions, 1980s. It's just like,
Without spoiling it, what do you think of the ending, the very end?
I liked it.
Yeah, I did.
I definitely liked it. This would be definitely a movie that I would recommend that you see if you have not seen it, by the way.
I would recommend this one too.
But it totally fits into the sort of over the top and plausible, like, oh my gosh, this would never happen in a million years type thing. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it.
It's a fun popcorn action film.
The one thing I was a little disappointed by, I have to say, and this is, again, because I haven't seen a plethora of Kathryn Bigelow films, so I don't want to generalize unfairly, but I feel like because this kind of takes place on the California coasts and beaches and you're in different locations, it maintained its sort of gritty, dull, gray color palette, which I would have liked to have seen the beauty of the beaches and like throw on a few filters to really make this thing look great. And I'm sure it was a deliberate choice, but it was a very drab looking movie, which I didn't like so much. And maybe that is her characteristic stamp where she does try to make things not look so picturesque or ideal, but like give me a little more color.
Yeah. No, I understand. So this one, obviously we both liked a lot better than Near Dark.
Right. I fully recommend it.
I would recommend this one. I'm glad I watched it. It didn't obviously win any awards, but it knows what it is,
right.
and I certainly appreciate it.
And I would definitely get why this has such a backing, why there is such kind of a cult following with this movie. I get it. I mean, this was fun, and I would definitely say, I talked about how Near Dark, I would not watch if it was on TV. Right. If I passed by on TNT and this movie was on, I'd be like, oh, hey, that was a great scene.
Of course, TNT or FX. FX. So I think that's all we have to say.
That wraps up our Kathryn Bigelow session. Please join us next week when I'm sure we're going to be doing something very entertaining. I do not recall off the top of my head.
I don't either, but we do.
It's going to be great. So you're going to be
we're going to be just as surprised as you.
So thank you for watching. If you have any comments or concerns, please feel free to contact us at programs@cshlibrary.org. I'm Jesse.
I'm Tom.
And thanks for watching.